morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Evanston. I am the Reverend Eileen, the senior minister here. It's good to be with you this morning. Shannon Lang, who was supposed to be our worship associate today, is not well today, so she's going to be okay, but that's why she's not here and why I'm here. Whether this is your spiritual home or you are newly discovering this community, we are so grateful that you're with us. We are an inclusive and welcoming community seeking truth in love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and our values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us is worthy of love and that we are all connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. We come together to remember our kinship with one another and to hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. If you're joining us online today, there are many links of connection in the description below the YouTube live stream, including the order of service credits, ways to support our mission, and how to join our email newsletter list. If you're here in the sanctuary today, we encourage you to use the QR code for the digital order of service, which is found at the table right before you enter the sanctuary, or take one of the large print orders of service. Both are located right outside. And there are also listening assistance devices there as well, and hymnals for anyone to use. A few announcements. If you're coming to the Real Team meeting this Wednesday to hear more about UU the Vote, please remember to pick up postcards today at the back tables before you leave. Our 6-month covenant groups will be starting in October. Check the newsletter to register or talk to Reverend Susan before October 3rd for more information. Next Sunday is our annual pet blessing service. So please bring your well-behaved and friendly pets on a leash, if appropriate, to be blessed in person. And if you can also send in a photo of your pet to me via email by next Friday, and we'll display them on the screen and over the live stream for the congregation to enjoy. Also next Sunday, there will be an orientation for the Our Whole Lives Sexuality Education Program at 4 p.m. This is for parents of youth in the 7th through 12th grades to learn more about the program. We are excited to be partnering with First Unitarian and Second Unitarian in Chicago in offering this important program. On Sunday, October 16th, beginning at 12 noon, there will be a pro-choice rally and march at Raymond Park in Evanston. Volunteers and donations to cover the cost of this event are needed. Please see Gretchen Brewster. There she is. For more information, she'll be at the back of the sanctuary after our evacuation drill and kinship time, and during kinship time. And now, let us settle into our shared time of reflection, celebration, and inspiration. As we begin our worship service, those joining us online are invited to gather your chalice as we join together in beloved community. Welcome to worship. Beautiful choir. The Unitarian Church of Evanston resides on the traditional homelands of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. In 1829, this land was recorded as being transferred from the local Potawatomi community, who had no choice but to sell their land to the U.S. government before being forcefully removed west of the Mississippi River. This land was then sold to white settlers. The Chicagoland area is now home to one of the largest and most diverse urban Native communities in the U.S. The acknowledgement of this land's history is one small effort toward building long-term solidarity with contemporary Indigenous communities. We name these realities with honor for all the ancestors and with respect to our descendants, with gratitude for the animals and plants sustained by this land, and with deep appreciation for the land we use as sacred space. Our chalice lighting this morning honors the Jewish high holy days of Rosh Hashanah, as did our introit. Rosh Hashanah begins tonight at sundown. We will sing together responsively as our chalice is lit, number 1037, We Begin Again in Love, which is a litany of atonement. This responsive hymn was written, and I'm going to ask you just to hold just for a minute, if it's okay. Yeah, thank you. Stay up here. You don't have to sit down. I'm just got a little bit more to say. The responsive hymn was written by the late and beloved UU minister, the Reverend Rob Eller Isaacs, who died this summer and whose life was celebrated last weekend in St. Paul, where he served the UU congregation for many, many years. As Dennis Wilson and Diane Markell light the chalice on behalf of our UU The Vote postcard writers, we'll sing in remembrance and in honor and in forgiveness this repeated refrain. The choir is going to sing it with us, and this is how it goes. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For selfishness that sets us apart and alone. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, for losing sight of our unity. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again invite you now to please rise in body or spirit and join in saying the words of our historical and living covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Before we sing our opening hymn, let's turn to one another briefly and say good morning. Please try to find somebody you don't know well yet, and if you're joining us from home, please check in and say hello on the chat.
Hello. You may remain uplifted. Feel free to remain uplifted and join us in singing hymn 399, Vine and Fig Tree. We will first sing this all together, and then it'll be a round. And you guys are part one, along with the choir there. You guys are part two when we start the round, and I'll be cueing you. And so when it's your time to sing, to come in. And then, let me see how that's written. So if I hold up a 1, that's and everyone neath a vine and fig tree. If I hold up a 2, it's a and into plowshares. So that, I think you know everything you need to know. Vine and fig tree.
I'm impressed we did so well with that round. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Yay! In my humble opinion, the time for all ages is the most important part of the worship service.
Yeah. I won't argue.
Okay, maybe second most. The importance of storytelling is significant in that it touches people at any age and allows us to lift up and share stories of the people who came before us and who are among us now. By telling stories, we are determining what is important to us as Unitarian Universalists. We are learning together in our congregation and our larger religious movement how the voices of people of color, LGBTQIA+, indigenous voices, women, and people with diverse experiences and lives are often left out, purposely excluded, or silenced.
In our democratic society, it is so important, and this is part of our principles too, that we share our perspectives, hear from many voices, and learn and grow from listening to each other's stories. And this is why we, as Unitarian Universalists, support the free and responsible search for truth and free and responsible speech.
This week is Banned Books Week, which came to be as a response to the fact that some of the books that many of us have read and loved are targeted for censorship in a variety of ways because they contain those diverse perspectives. So how many of you have read, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret? Yes. It was banned for its portrayal of religion and its frank discussions on puberty and sexuality. Or more recently, who has read the book, The Hate You Give? Yeah, which was written by a Black woman. It was pulled from classrooms right here in Illinois due to its profanity.
Some people are scared in our country that children and youth will learn things about racism and how people of color are affected by it. In many states, teachers are not allowed to talk about this issue. Perhaps you've heard of a term called critical race theory. It's the idea that race is a social construct, that people and societies create racial systems that keep people oppressed. Critical race theory talks about racism as something that is embedded in our legal systems. This should not be a controversial idea. There's overwhelming evidence that there is truth to this perspective, but some people don't want us to talk about it.
Or perhaps you've heard of the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. Yes? Yeah. This is a way to keep teachers from talking about gay and transgender issues for kids in kindergarten through third grade, which is many of you down here. Yes. Older kids can be taught it, though, as long as it's age appropriate. Some argue that even by addressing their teacher by Mr. or Mrs., that they are being taught gender identity.
One of my favorite books of all time is To Kill a Mockingbird. Many of you, I'm sure, have read it and enjoyed it. It's been challenged or banned in some places because it talks about racism and contains racial slurs which demonstrate the ugliness of racism. Another book that we have on our book cart in the back, on our Rainbow Alliance book cart, is I Am Jazz. It's by Jessica Herthel and Jazz Jennings, and it's challenged because it is the story of a transgender child, and some people think that it's dangerous to even talk about being transgender.
I already mentioned my favorite, or at least one of them, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I had read that book when I was about 11, yes, a long time ago. And being a UU raised person, the idea that someone could be raised without a religious tradition was not really a surprise. For me, however, the book addressed topics that were foreign, such as the questions I had about puberty.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
We have a few books, if you come up to our table later, that are on the banned book list in recent years. And we invite you to come forward if you brought a banned book to swap later on. Please come on up if you haven't already dropped a book off. And after the evacuation drill, yes, we hope that you'll return up here and choose another book from the banned book table to take home and enjoy, and talk with each other about what you've learned from any of the books you've read up here or otherwise during our kinship time.
And you're invited to bring up a book at any time during the service. So thank you very much. Each Sunday we hold space for the joys and sorrows of those gathered here, honoring the struggles and the triumphs, the brokenness and the wholeness that is woven into the human experience. If you have a joy or a sorrow you'd like spoken aloud and shared with this community, you can write it in the Joys and Sorrows book, which is found at the back table. You can send me an email, or you can fill out the Google form found on the homepage of our website. These are the joys and sorrows that have been shared today. A joy from Shirley Adams and Jane Kennemore. The weather last week was beautiful, and we had a great bike tour of Black history sites in Evanston. We even had visitors from Dallas join us at the Edwin Jourdain House. We all learned so much. Thank you to Shirley and Jane for leading that bike tour. And from Melanie Kitchener, I am thrilled to share that neither my daughter-in-law or granddaughter suffered any injuries in the crash that happened Saturday in California. Their car was pretty mangled, but airbags and seatbelts kept my gals safe. So glad, Melanie. This sacred space for our tender offerings is part of the practice of beloved community. Together we expand our celebrations and we lessen the burden of our grief. If you have a joy or a sorrow or a prayer on your heart that you didn't want to speak out loud but you'd like to recognize, please come forward now and light a candle before this community. If you have a joy or sorrow that you'd like me to come to you with a candle, please raise your hand. Let us say together, for these joys, we give our thanks. For these sorrows, we give our love. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. This prayer, only begun, is by Reverend William Sinkford. Spirit of life and love, dear God of all nations, there is so much work to do. We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. Help us hold fast to our vision of what can be. May we see the hope in our history and find the courage and the voice to work for that constant rebirth of freedom and justice. This is our dream. Amen. Blessed be. As we sing our response, number 100, I've got Peace Like a River, we invite children and youth, preschool through 6th grade, to head to their faith formation time with their adult leaders.
As we say in our covenant each Sunday, service is our law. UCE is called by our mission, values, and principles to contribute to our community, to form accountable partnerships, and to express gratitude through giving. Today's offering will be shared with the American Indian Center of Chicago. Their mission is to promote fellowship among Indian people of all tribes within the metropolitan Chicago area, and to create bonds of understanding and communication between Indians and non-Indians. They seek to advance the general welfare of American Indians, to foster the economic advancement of Indian people, to sustain cultural, artistic, and avocational pursuits, and to perpetuate Indian cultural values. If you are joining us from home or in the building today, you are invited to give through text, mail in a check, or give from our website. And if you're writing a check, please write in the memo line if it's for shared offering, your pledge, or one of the other giving items. Will the ushers please come forward? If you're in the sanctuary today, we'll be passing the collection bowls up and down the rows. Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy.
Thank you for your generosity. Our reading today is Benediction to Build a World from Incantations for Rest by local Evanston author and artist and fellow UU, Atina O. Danner. Part Black Panther, part preschool teacher, Atina insists upon Black liberation and boundless curiosity. Her poems range from kitchen table specificity to universal relatability, covering topics including neurodiversity, human connection, and collective liberation. We're going to share this reading as a call and response. I'll say the words in plain text, and you say the yellow italicized words. In what world are you powerful?
In this world, we can build power together.
In what world do you act on knowledge and truth?
In this world, we can learn and move toward justice together.
In what world do you hold your values in the face of what scares you?
In this world, we can affirm each other's resolve to do right together.
In what world are you confident in your worth?
In this world, we can affirm that each of us is enough.
In what world do faith and beliefs guide your choices?
Together, we can build this world.
In what world can you learn from those with less power?
Together, we can build this world.
In what world could empathy shield you from judging others?
Together, we can build this world.
In what world will your power plant roots and tend to branches and leaves? Together, we can build that world. Our anthem this morning is Give Me Your Tired, Your Poor, and it is the final stanzas of Emma Lazarus's poem etched into the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Lazarus was a New York poet and descendant of Jewish immigrants. These words, which have been lifted up more often in the last several years in the midst of rising threats to liberty, call us to acknowledge the struggle for liberation and to recognize such liberty is the birthright of us all.
So grateful my mask didn't get caught in my earrings. Good morning. I have a confession to make, and some of you might find that strange because I'm a born and raised Unitarian. Do we make confessions? Well, here's my confession. I've always doubted the impact of poll watching. My perspective changed on August 9th this summer in Wisconsin primaries. I have a second confession to make. I probably wouldn't have gone had my good friend Maggie Weiss not invited me. I probably went. More than half of the reason I went was to be with Maggie. And you know how hard it is to get on her dance card. She's a busy woman. We arrived at 6:30 at the polling station we were assigned to by the Wisconsin Democrats in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Maggie positioned herself inside, and I took a spot outside next to the check-in desk. We settled in for what would be a 14-hour shift. There was only one other person besides Maggie that I was allowed to talk with. So I struck up a conversation with the election judge. I soon learned that she thought the Affordable Care Act was a bad idea, a big mistake. She also revealed that she was totally in support of this absurd policy in Wisconsin, which crosses people off the roster of voters if they haven't voted within 2 years. Maggie and I saw at least 25 people have to re-register. Now, fortunately, Wisconsin lets you do that. Re-register to vote takes about 30 minutes. So if you were late for work that day, forget it. You might not get a chance to vote. In the early afternoon, I heard a woman check into the desk, explaining, you know, I have an address, but I lost my home, and I'm homeless, and I still want to vote. I don't want to vote on that old address because I don't want my vote to be discounted. I don't want somebody to claim voter fraud. So how do I register? The election judge was called. The judge proceeded to explain multiple ways this woman could become qualified to vote, even though she was homeless. She basically needed a letter with the letterhead of a social service agency that verified that she was homeless. It just so happened that in this building there was a job center. But then the judge gave her a lot of other options after that one. The voter seemed confused, got frustrated. She didn't seem to understand that first simple way that the judge had explained. The voter said, "This is so typical. There's so much prejudice against homeless people. You just don't want us to vote." And she exited in a huff. I scurried out the side door to catch her before she left. "Do you want to vote?" I asked. "Why, yes, I do. This is just discrimination. They don't want us homeless folks to vote." I proceeded to explain the simple solution that was available to her right there. I walked her to the entrance of the job center. I got her phone number, and we texted over the next hour and a half as she waited for the appropriate documentation. After about a total of 2 hours, she was finally verified and re-registered so that she could vote. I have to say, I don't think what I saw was actually voter suppression. It was a lack of clear instructions, a lack of patience on the part of the election judge. That might have resulted in the woman not getting to vote if I hadn't been there. Well, I'm going back on November 8th to Wisconsin with Maggie, and this time I'm going to be with Maggie, but I'm also going to be a poll observer. I'm going not because I expect a significantly profound experience like I had then. I'm going because I learned that we just need to be present as a watchful eye on the election judges to hold them accountable for how they interact with voters. Of course, not everyone can be a poll observer. I encourage you first and foremost to vote. Unfortunately, I can't advise you to vote often, which I've been tempted to write on those postcards, vote early, vote often, in the fine print. But you can also join Carolyn and Shirley and Craig in their postcard writing campaign. Good luck, and thanks for your time.
Our next reflection is from the Reverend Ashley Horan, who is the Organizing Strategy Director at our Unitarian Universalist Association. She leads the team that holds Side with Love and all the other outward-facing justice work of the association, including campaigns like You the Vote, Love Resists, Create Climate Justice, and Uplift Action. Ashley lives in Minneapolis with her partner, the Reverend Karen Hutt, and their two youngest children, Aspen and Eden. She sent in a recording of her reflection.
Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address is only 272 words long, and I want to argue that it should be 275. The famous last sentence of the speech might be the most famous definition of democracy in the English language. That a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. But did you know that Lincoln stole those words from a speech from 13 years earlier by the famous Unitarian minister Theodore Parker, who at the 1850 New England Anti-Slavery Society Convention argued that the brutality of chattel slavery was fundamentally opposed to what he called the three-part American idea, that all people are created equal and have certain inalienable rights, and therefore the government's job is to ensure that people can access and enjoy those rights. And he concluded his speech, "This idea demands a democracy. That is, a government of all the people, by all the people, for all the people." You heard it. Parker's speech had 3 words that Lincoln omitted. All. Now I could spend a whole sermon unpacking that, but for now let's focus on why the word all is so key to Parker's definition of democracy in the first place. So every religious tradition has what we refer to as a theological anthropology, which is really $1 million word for saying what we believe about human nature. Some Christian traditions have a theological anthropology of original sin or human depravity, predestination to punishment because we are irredeemable. That theological anthropology, of course, leads to a belief that humanity as a whole is sinful and depraved, and so we need an exceptional Messiah or anointed leader to determine what is best for us, because, of course, we can't do that for ourselves. Other Christian traditions, like classical Universalism and the later Unitarianism that Parker was preaching in 1850, they stem from a theological anthropology that every person is born with inherent worth and dignity. Humans can and do commit evil, of course, but because we are all born from a love that will not let us go, we believe the people as a whole retain an unbreakable connection to that source of goodness and creativity. Therefore, we trust neither Messiah nor monarch as a supreme ruler. Rather, we trust that the more of all the people who get to decide what is done to all the people, the more likely that we will err on the side of mutual care and support and freedom for all the people. Democracy holds such a central place in modern-day Unitarian Universalism. Our principles include, of course, a commitment to affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Even though our society has yet to fully realize that promise, our UU theology proposes that a robust democracy is both a religious practice and our best hope for a truly equitable society with liberty and justice for all. I don't have to tell you that democracy is under attack, both here in the US and across the globe. The strategy of the radical right is fundamentally to make it legal for a small group of people to control the bodies and restrict the agency of everyone else. But I want to suggest that the task of resuscitating, reimagining, reincarnating democracy is fundamentally a religious one, as well as a civic one. As religious leaders and spiritual communities, our faith calls us to the holy work of building a society in which the potential in each of us is realizable by all of us. The promise of democracy lies in a belief that the people together will gravitate toward the common good and collectively be better than the sum of our individual parts. As a religious practice, the embodiment of democracy is a constant cycle of enlarging the we and collaboratively building a reality in which power is shared, self-determination is unfettered, and reverence for life is fundamental. The religious and spiritual practice of democracy can look like our You the Vote campaign that thousands of our siblings in faith are engaging in right now, knocking on doors, registering voters, fighting for our values at the ballot box. But democracy can also look like opening the doors of the congregation to a family of undocumented migrants or Black Lives Matter protesters, like multi-faith coalitions creating networks of hospitality and resources to support people accessing abortion care, gender-affirming care, no matter where they live. It can look like providing supplies or cooking meals or giving childcare, doing jail support, risking arrest alongside water protectors. The spiritual practice of democracy takes many forms, and it happens 365 days a year. Beloveds, the urgency is overwhelming, the heartbreak is unrelenting, and the stakes are unfathomably high. But like our religious ancestors, our faith reminds us that even in the face of all the brokenness, the biggest possible we, the beloved community of all the people, by all the people, for all the people, that is an aspiration worthy of our fiercest commitment and our deepest loyalty. The spiritual practice of embodying, building, fighting for true democracy is a source of hope and a path toward our collective liberation. May we be blessed, each and all of us, as we build together. May it be so. Blessed be Ashe and Amen.
I'll be your last in the trilogy of reflections. It is common during the years with a presidential election that there is greater civic involvement and greater voter turnout at the polls. The problem with this is a misunderstanding of the great importance of voting for representatives, senators, school board members, referendums, judges during the off years, the non-presidential election years. And this year is one of those midterm election cycles. A year when there is so much at stake, but also a year when there is typically less involvement means that we need to be even more engaged. In the fall, I first started here at UCE. The UU The Vote team had a goal that Shirley Adams made this nice chart, and underneath this 40, it says 1. The goal was 1,000 points of love. And each point of love is a point of contact. So instead of 1,000 contacts, you all made over 22,000 contacts just through writing postcards alone, without tracking any of the other work that you were doing during that election cycle. So when this midterm election season started, our UU The Vote team set an ambitious goal of 40,000 points of love. And each point of love is a point of contact. So we're tracking not just the postcards written, but any contact that any of you make, whether it's text banking, phone banking, canvassing, poll watching, or even personal conversations. This is our tracking sign. I'm going to show it to the choir so you don't feel left out, because I know sometimes that happens. And we are already a third of the way at our goal. You all have let Shirley Adams know that you have made 14,500 points of contact already in this election cycle, and we still have 6 weeks until the election. So you are invited to let me or Shirley know if you have been involved up till now, or if you are continuing to be involved. Have you talked with your parents or your adult children or your best friend about voting? Have you been knocking on doors or writing postcards with an organization outside of UCE? We want to know what you are up to during this election cycle. And we want to invite you into this work. There are, at the UU The Vote table at the back, I Commit to Vote pledge cards, and everybody in the congregation is encouraged to vote and to sign a pledge card so that we have a sense of our immense movement out into the world in this election cycle. And there are postcards available for pickup every Sunday through October 16th. And that Sunday will be our last hurrah of handing out postcards, and we're going to have a Democracy in Action party with UUANI, the UU Advocacy Network of Illinois, and several other congregations. So it will be multi-platform, and we'll be hearing from other congregations as well. And there are other opportunities for involvement listed in every Friday's newsletter. Our 40,000 Points of Love initiative is about connection. Connecting with friends and family and neighbors and strangers. Not everyone you talk to has to register to vote. Not every postcard you send has to lead to someone voting. What is important is that we are creating the connections. We are fostering the conversation, and we are learning about the importance of our democratic process. I leave you with the words from our UUA president, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray. Voter mobilization is not just political. For Unitarian Universalists, this is faithful moral action, because democracy and the right of all people to have a voice and a vote are at the heart of our 7 principles. This work is about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It is about restoring right relationship with the planet. It is about our commitment to justice and equity for all people. We are called to courageously embody the deepest values of our faith with our hearts, bodies, and spirits, while building toward an abundant future in which all are free and flourishing. What happens in November matters, and what we do today will shape what happens on Election Day. Our voice, our values, our willingness to show up matter right now. We are small, but we are mighty, and that mighty love and spirit-centered courage is exactly what we need today. Thank you. What are we singing?
Our closing hymn, oh, sorry, we have to extinguish our chalice first. Hold on, gotta find my right page. Where am I? I'm sorry, I'm a little lost here. There we go. As we extinguish the chalice, Dennis and Diane, please join in reading the words found on the screen by the Reverend Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this chalice flame with not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn. Because of the time, we're going to just sing verse 1 and 2. To build a new way of love, a new way of possibility, a new way of liberation together in power and joy. Let us go remaking the world. But first,
Sit down for just a second. All right, so please be seated for a moment, and I'm going to go through a few brief instructions for our evacuation drill. I was a house manager at Blue Man Group for 10 years, and we did this every year. So I know some of you are anxious, so I invite you to take a deep breath. This is actually a time